welcome. If you're here for the first time, welcome back. If you've been here for previous days. I'm Jan Holden. I'm serving currently as president of IANDS, and it's my great pleasure to introduce, full disclosure, my friend, Bob Coppes. And he is from the Netherlands. And a few months ago, maybe almost a year ago, my husband and I were there on vacation, and Bob and his husband Jerry hosted us for the most wonderful dinner, and then the next day I got the Coppes tour of Amsterdam. So they were just the most wonderful hosts, and Bob has been working for a couple years on his new book. And it is one of only 3 books that IANDS has published. So we're very proud of this addition to our publication library. So I'm going to let Bob tell you all about his process and probably inspire you with the contents of his book. So here is Bob Coppes.
Thank you very much. I hear my microphone is on, so I can start. Love and oneness. Love and oneness. Those are 2 words that I'll explain later, but I want to start with saying how grateful I am that you're here, listening to my keynote speech, and that's about the book, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, and that contains a wealth of quotes from NDErs. And I'm also grateful to the NDErs who are in my book, because I think they are the best tutors. I'm grateful to any NDEr, not only those in my book, by the way. They are good and the best tutors in life, I think. I also want to thank Jan Holden for painstakingly having gone through the manuscript and made it better. And then also to Susan Mays and Robert Mays for going through that version once again, meticulously, so it is flawless. There are no mistakes there. Jen said already that it's a publication by IANDS, and it contains hundreds of quotes of near-death experiencers. And there are quotes from well-known NDErs, like Eben Alexander, who is in the hall here, and Anita Morjani, both of whom gave a wonderful endorsement for my book. But there are also less well-known NDErs who wrote their NDEs in books, and I really recommend those. It's so important that those stories all get out there, and not perhaps only through books, but also submitted in the IANDS archives or in NDERF archive. And in Europe we have, in Belgium, Ponto 3. All these quotes together give you an impression of what an NDE is, hence the name of the book, the title of the book. Because you have to picture, Jan told already, I live in Amsterdam. We have a big square, the Dam Square, that's why it's called Amsterdam. And on the square we have a big palace. And by the way, Amsterdam was the place where it was decided to found New York on the spot on Manhattan where it is now. But so if you look at the building from the Dam Square, you see the front. You don't see the sides. You don't see the back. You don't see the interior. The interior is really wonderful, but you don't see that. You need to have more points of view to have a good grips, a good impression of what the palace is. That's why I had this book with so many quotes, and I organized them in chapters. I'll come to that. And in my book, I leave it up to the reader to come up with their own conclusion. I don't need to tell you what to conclude. But if you'd ask me, the conclusions are the 2 words that I started off with: So that's love and oneness. Those are really important. Love is the most important thing there is, and we are one. I am you, and you are me, and we are one, and love binds us. So, but you have to do it yourself. You have to read the book and then come to your own conclusion. What I'm going to do now is go through the 12 chapters of my book and throw quotations at you that I find interesting, but all of them were really interesting, so it's difficult to select, but I'll do a few. And you might think, oh, 12, that's too much. You know, in textbooks it says never more than 3 bullets, because more bullets people can't remember. I don't care. I'm stubborn. I'm an economist. I'm from the Netherlands, so that is 3 times whammy. What you have to do is just relax. Sit in your chair. Enjoy the quotes. Enjoy the ride. And bring back home the quotes that resonate with you. And perhaps also my book. Okay, first chapter. That's, of course, the first part of your NDE. Where does it start? It starts getting out of your body. And that seems to be very, very easy. Getting out of your body is just a piece of cake. Just to quote one person on that, this person said, it was like popping a toast out of a toaster. It's that easy. Then, just to give you a sense of how strange that feels to many people who have an out-of-body experience for the first time, there is this story about a woman who was in a hospital, and she had a critical situation. She left her body, and she looked down, and she thought, oh my, there is a woman lying there with the same nightgown as I have. And then suddenly, just a second after, she realizes that it's her. And then the story continues. Because in the corridor of the hospital, there is a telephone booth. For the younger people amongst us, the telephone booths are these little cubicles that have telephones that you cannot bring home. And they are attached to the wall. So this person is in the telephone booth. The husband is in the telephone booth, phoning with a friend in another state. Now, she was hovering just below the ceiling, and then she heard her husband talk. She was with the husband in the telephone booth at that moment. And then when the friend in the other state would reply, she would be in the other state. And then when the husband said something, she would be back again with him. So that went back and forth. Another story. Nancy Rhines, you might know her. She had an NDE as a result from a traffic accident. She was cycling. She was run over by this big SUV. And the moment she is under the truck, you must try to picture how that is. She is under the truck, looking up to the grill of the car, and then kicks in her instinct to survive, her animal instinct to survive. But at the same time, she was hovering above the scene, looking down and being totally neutral. And this dual point of view is something that has been said many times by NDErs. That's very interesting how that works. So if you get more of these stories, you get a little sense of how you can get out of your body. The second one is veridical observations, because I think it's very important to say something more about how can you prove these kind of things? Aren't they just things that go on in your brain that is dying or something like that? No. I think there is very valuable circumstantial evidence to show that these things are real, at least the part where your consciousness can get out of your body and be separate from your body and go on. And veridical observations are actually verified out-of-body experiences. So those are subsets of NDEs. And I'll give you an example. but you have to tell me which one, because I have limited time. I can't do all the examples. So it's either the flapping surgeon or the smoking grannies. Smoking grannies. I hear smoking. This is a kind of auction too. So, smoking grannies. There is a girl called Michaela driving in a car on a highway in the United States somewhere, and there's an accident. Her car is going under the truck in front of her. They had to get her out. She was in such a severe situation that she had to be flown by helicopter to the hospital. She was unconscious all the time, so she couldn't see anything. Well, not from a physical point of view, of course. During the flight, she had her NDE. And in that NDE, she saw what kind of future life she could have had if she hadn't had the accident. And in it, it was shown that she would have grandchildren. Now that really triggered her, because she was in such a nice state, but she also thought, I'd like to have the grandchildren. I'd like to have that experience. So what happened is that she pleaded with God, as she said it herself, to stay alive. God granted that to her, so she was suddenly up near the ceiling of the room where she was in, where her body was in, and then she went in and out of her body for a week or so. But the interesting part is where at one moment she saw her parents sitting in the cafeteria of the hospital. So, and there were the grannies there. That's the moment that the grannies step in. And the father was so nervous that he wanted to get out to get a smoke. So what he did is he rushed out. He said, I need a smoke. And then one of the grannies said, oh, I need a smoke too. And she never smoked, would never smoke. The second granny said the same thing, similar thing, very odd. They went all out to get a smoke. Now, later on, she recovered, and she came back in her body, and everything was okay. And she told the parents that she had been seeing everything, and they didn't believe her, until she said, I saw you get out to smoke, and the grannies went with my father. So that's and there are hundreds of those stories out there, and they are captured in this wonderful book there, The Self Does Not Die, that has a second edition. If you can get that, go get it. It's not there available yet, I think, but it's within a week it's available. You can get it on the internet. Okay, third chapter. We're proceeding. Out of this world, you know, if you read through the quotes, it's amazing how people say it's so real there. You think your chair that you're sitting on is real. It's sort of real, but there it is much more real than the chair you're sitting on. It's more lively, more dimensional. It's so much more. And it's difficult to explain. You cannot put it in words. And one of the best mediums I know, that's Anouska Koopman. She's in the hall here with me. She is from Amsterdam too. I took a lot of people with me from Amsterdam. And she said, explaining that kind of stuff is like playing Beethoven on a bucket. The real thing is Beethoven, but you get a bucket to imitate that. Or a painting a Rembrandt, but just getting a paving stone with 2 colors of chalk. You can't do that. The other thing is that time is so different there. It either doesn't exist or it is all at the same time. That's an actual quote. All time is there at the same time. I love that quote because that means that my birth is there still. I can see it, if I'm there, of course. I was watching eternity unfold. My experience was not in the time, it was between time. Those are quotes that indicate how strange it goes there. Then place is not a difficulty either. You can be wherever you want to be. Like Anita Morjani died in a hospital somewhere, and her brother she went out of her body, And she looked around, her family was there, everyone was there, except for one, that was her brother. And the moment she thought of that, she was with the brother in the airplane, seeing how he tried to get there in time before she would actually die. And then she understood what he was thinking and his sense of urgency and worries, everything like that. Then there is this other example of an Iranian guy who had an accident in the middle of the desert, but fortunately there was a bus coming and they took him to the hospital, and there he was hovering above his body. He saw the whole operation going on his body, and then he thought, what about my mother? Where is my mother? And then he was at the home of the mother, in her kitchen, seeing that she was preparing dinner. And then he thought, that's strange. How would my friends be? And then he was at the house of one of those friends. But at the same time, he could see his mother go about the kitchen. And he could see the operation going on, all at the same time. So place is not an issue. All knowledge is freely available. And Ellen Dye said, you have some kind of influence over what you see. I'll give you an example from Ellen Dye, but I need a little zip. Was that the microphone? Ellen Dye said, you create your own world. As soon as I had that thought, no, I have to explain to you. Ellen went out of her body. She was in a dark environment, nothing there. But it felt with a lot of love. So she felt all this love there. And then, so she was hovering some time there, and then she thought, I'd like to see something else than this darkness. And the moment she thought that, she says, as soon as I had that thought, everything shimmered and shifted. And I found myself looking out on a park-like setting. It was as if a giant hand with many paintbrushes moved across the canvas, painting the scene with the greenest grass I've ever seen. The largest and most beautiful and most alive flowers and trees, rolling hills with pathways and blue skies with birds overhead. The colors were brighter and deeper and more alive than any I had ever seen. I smelled roses and sunshine and freshness. The trees and birds and flowers and the grass were alive and conscious too. So that is what she saw. So you have some kind of influence over what you want to see. Then I come to love. I told you that's the most important thing together with oneness. But I want to say something about love because it's often said it's unconditional. Now it's difficult to wrap your head around unconditional because it means that there are no conditions, not one. So it doesn't matter who you are, how rich or poor you are, if you're a woman or a man, or you're from Bangladesh, being an Islamist, or in a Christian area. It doesn't matter what religion you have. You can pray 5 times a day in a certain direction. You don't have to. You can go to church. Doesn't matter. If you don't go, that's fine too. Atheists as well. Everyone. And then I want you to think of someone you really dislike. Everyone has such a person. Yes, really. Also that person. There's unconditional love for that person. Then this quote, I learned that what people think of as God is the energy of love, which binds the universe together. All life, all physics. The energy of love is the essence of life. The light, can't skip that one, of course. But it's pure love, pure peace, pure perfection. And I leave all the other quotes for you to read, but there's one that I really like. Because this person said, the light is everywhere. So also in this room, it's incredible, but it hides in plain sight. It hides in plain sight. And how did he compare that? He said, at this moment, you're sitting on a chair, but there is a lot of pressure on your shoulders. You don't know that, but that's the case. It's the air pressure. It's there. And in Europe, we have 1 kilo per square centimeter. And I had to look it up how much it is here, because you have this funny system that's not metric. So it's 15 pounds per square inch. That's how much is on your shoulder. You don't feel it, but it's there. The same as the light, it's there. The life review, now that's really something. A life review is exactly what it is. It gives you an overview of your life. I'll give you an example of a woman that I came across in the Netherlands, and she had been little just after the war. And in the Netherlands, the war was really horrible. We were a war-torn country afterwards. There was nothing. Food was scarce, and sweets like luxury. Now, the mother of this child gave some sweets to this child to the NDER to share with friends. Now, she went to school, shared it, and in her life review, she saw that particular moment that she shared that. And what she felt was the happiness on account of the school friend, that she was thought so valuable to be sharing sweets with. And she didn't feel it as if it was, oh, she is very happy. No, she was that other person. She was that friend. She was exactly that person. And it didn't stop with the friend. It went on. It was like a ripple effect, because she saw that the mother was affected as well. Affect is perhaps not the right word, but touched also by this gesture. And it goes on. So every gesture we do, everything we do has an influence everywhere. Similarly, she had another friend who had lice. You know, these are these crawling animals in your hair. They're itchy. It's not very nice to have. And they hadn't had shampoo at that time. So what do? You ask your friend, please help me a little bit with these lice. And then instead of saying, let's go somewhere, do it secretly, she said, okay, I'll do it with you have lice, come on. And then everyone around her heard that. So the NDER, when she was in her life review, she saw this particular moment where she was doing that to her school friend who had lice. So, and then she felt as if she was the school friend, being stabbed in the heart with all that she said. But the funny thing is, she said that hurt, because that's not very nice to do. And it hurt because I was that school friend. But there was something else that was really hurting more. And that was that she noticed, she understood she had options. She had the possibility to choose, she had the possibility to choose something else that would have brought much more love and light into the world. And that she didn't do that felt like really painful. Now, Daniel Brinkley, that's one of the other people that you might know, is a well-known NDER. He said of himself that he was a very horrible person because he was bullying children in school, he stole their bikes, and then later on he went working for this American institution that killed off people from in other states that didn't abide by the American something, I don't know. So what happened is that Daniel said at one point, I blew up a hotel with 50 people in it just to take out one. So all the 49 people were dead as well. So, and then in his life review, he relived all his kills, not only from his point of view, but also from the point of view of the others that he put to death, but also the wives and the children of those others. So, and that was really painful. But he has this other story in his book. It's a great book about a goat. So it's not only people, it's only also animals. Because what he saw in his life review, that he was driving through the countryside with his uncle, and at one point he saw a farmer hitting or whipping a goat that had his head stuck in the fence. And, well, Daniel, being very explosive at the time, he just stopped the car, rushed out, went over to this farmer, and before the farmer knew what was happening, he was hitting and beating up the farmer. And then he saw in his life review that the goat was feeling happy for being released of this whipping for a moment so he could get out. So he felt the gratitude on behalf of the goat. Can you imagine? And plants too. There's this story about the Iranian guy who had to fetch water from the river to get at home. But he was a little boy and the bucket was too heavy. So then he thought, I can't make it home, let me pour some out. But then he looked around, he saw this little tree standing there, and he thought, that looks a little thirsty. And so he took the bucket and emptied it a little bit near the tree to drink. And in his life review, he saw this gesture, and he saw how happy everyone or all was with this little gesture. And then the Boy Scout, that's a nice story too. There's this Boy Scout who drowned and then had his life review in the presence of what he said was an angel. So then when it's over, he says to the angel, "Ooh, I hope I'm not being judged too severely." And then the angel says, "Well, you are judged by the most powerful judge there is." And then he says, "When will that happen?" And then the angel said, "It had already happened. The judge is you." The 7th chapter is everyone is important. Yay! There is a purpose and a plan for everyone. If you didn't have a plan, you'd get out here, because that's the time you leave. And I just one story here. Jolene Stout, she's not here at the moment. She has I got it from internet from her. She was in Austria having a marriage that wasn't really going well. It's not because he's Austrian, but it didn't go well. Yeah? So don't get me wrong there. So and then I'm European too, so but not Austrian. So she was really very sad in her marriage. She was alone. She didn't have any contacts, and then on top of everything, she heard that she could never have children. That really did it for her. So she was in such a depression that she wanted to be dead. And then she had her experience in which Jesus came along. Now, I have to have a break here because Jesus is seen in many NDEs. But so are other deities from other religions. So don't think that the Christianity is the only religion that counts. What we're talking about is much bigger than any religion. Okay, having said that, she saw Jesus, and Jesus said to her, "Don't waste your life thinking you're not loved. Don't waste your life thinking of that you're not loved." And then later she thought of this and she said, "Oh, apparently I have a life that can be wasted." And we are loved. Everyone is loved. She realized that even if you're alone, even if you're in a desert, you are loved still. Then I come to distressing NDEs. I cannot just not talk about it because they are there. They exist. So I needed to do something about that. I have a whole chapter on distressing NDEs, and I showed it to Nancy Evans-Bush, who is really an expert on this matter. And we went back and forth with the text, and I went through her books, and I read a lot of it around it. So what I want to say here at this moment, but you have to read the chapter to get more grasp of what I'm talking about, is that the thing is, you cannot say that distressing NDEs only occur to bad people, and that blissful NDEs only happen to good people. And I do this because good and bad are words of our earth. There is a moralistic thing around it that is colored by churches or upbringing or whatever in your culture. So, but So you cannot say that a good person will always get a good, a blissful NDE, and bad persons will always have bad NDEs. Example being Daniel Brinkley. I told you that he made an explosion in a hotel to just get rid of one person and killing off 49 others. And the way he acted in his life was what you could call perhaps not very nice, not a nice person. Yet he had a wonderful NDE. And there are others, there are in my book, some of them. One case is M.K. McDaniel, who wrote a whole book about that. She said, and she is just an ordinary, a common person like every one of us. Nothing special, not doing anything wrong. Of course, we all do things wrong, but nothing in particular. She didn't kill off 49 people or 50 people in a hotel, something like that. She didn't do that. And she had a distressing NDE, and there are a few other examples. So the point is that you need to have another explanation for why a distressing NDE comes up. And Nancy says something like, when we are in our near-death experience, the phase that we are not really dead altogether and we can never come back again, so things like archetypes from our unconscious, our collective unconscious, can still pop up. And maybe not only from the collective unconscious, but also from your own upbringing or from your background. Like what I said, Kathy McDaniel said she had judgments on prostitution and AIDS, and those were the things that she really got into her NDE, in her distressing NDE. Then I like to finish this part on the distressing NDEs by saying that there are also NDErs who hear explicitly that there is no hell. Chris Carlson, for instance, he said, I heard that really there is no purgatory and no hell. Another one said, I was shown there is no hell, we all go home. So what I believe is eventually we will all be there. And there's another reason why I think that's the case, because the next chapter is on unity. We are one. Why would one part of the oneness be left in distress? I don't find that logical. And it doesn't figure with the idea of unconditional love. I forgot to tell you that on the unconditional love part, Anita Moorjani had this quote. She said also that it's unconditional love, but it's more than that. That doesn't cover it. It's more than that. So words get in the way, yeah? So the number 9, that's interconnection. We are one. Give you one quote here, many, but this is one. Everything I do has influence on everything. Nothing is lost. It is a kind of law of conservation of energy. That is why we shouldn't do to others what we don't want for ourselves. Moreover, what we send, we will attract. We should also be mindful of the things we think, because we create with our thoughts. And then this experience of a woman who had her near-death experience, and she knew she had to go back again. And she wanted to go back because she had a child to look after, and she wanted to go back. So she thought, oh, I've seen all this. I understand everything, and it's so simple. It is so simple. Why can't we see it when we are in the body? How is that possible? And then she thinks, okay, I'm going to think of one line that says it all. It contains everything, the essence of what I find here. I know I will drop everything because a lot of the knowledge I won't be able to bring with me, but this line I'm going to take with me. And that line is, all is everything and everything is one. All is everything and everything is one. But if you take it a step further, we're not just one. I'll give you a quote of a Dutch lady who recently died, unfortunately. She died really before she had her NDE. Before that, she had her NDE. So I feel completely perfect, completely one with the light and the love. And I know that it is God. I am in God, and God is in me. We are perfect unity. And Caroline Van Groff, I think she's in the room somewhere, God is in everything and unites us all. And there is this wonderful story in Liz Dale's book. It's a book with stories of gay NDErs, and one of those is a man who had lost a dear friend 3 days before. And then he was so depressed, and he drank too much. He had big problems anyway, and then he died as well. And then once he was in his near-death experience, he got to see this friend again. And then he thought, okay, so if I see him, then I must be dead too. And then a conversation starts between them, and the friend wants to explain to the NDEr more about time, how time works there, or that time is all there at the same time, that you can access any time that you want. And he knew also that this NDEr was very, very much interested in Michelangelo. You know, the artist in Italy, the Renaissance artist. So he takes the NDEr back to the time of Michelangelo. And in the Sistine Chapel, where he sees Michelangelo on a scaffolding under the ceiling, painting the ceiling. And this NDEr was like, geez, how is that possible? And then it doesn't stop there, because for one fleeting moment he says, I became Michelangelo. I was Michelangelo. And he said that was staggering beyond words. Can you imagine being someone else? You can be, if you like, you can be Cleopatra once you're there. You can be anyone. And then Yvonne Sneeden, I think she's here too somewhere, he took my heart, talking about Jesus, because she saw Jesus as well. He took my heart, or my being, my identity, the energy that is me, and he merged with it, blended it with his heart. And for a moment we were one. I exploded into the light itself. I could feel all his feelings of love. It was mind-blowing. And then there's another example that I'd like to tell you. This person had her near-death experience. She gets out of her body and she says, getting rid of your body is such a nice experience, because it gives such a freedom. You have to have no emotions, no experiences. But then she continues. Here it comes. And she said, I went to a place where I no longer exist as a separate entity. It's like a drop in the ocean. You are totally dissolved. There is no separate consciousness. There is a vastness, and you are dissolved in whatever word we use for the Godhead. So I think we all go there. I mean, you're dissolved. Your consciousness will get out of your body, but then dissolves because we are God. And Ellen Dye, again, the God I was experiencing is all that is. God is everything, including each one of us. God is the creative force of all the universes, a giant ocean of love from which all matter is created, and I was like a drop of that ocean, and once had been separated, and then finally back again where I belonged, in the ocean. She went back to the ocean, but had to come back again. Okay. Why are we on Earth? Don't we all want to know that? Sometimes people ask about that during their NDE, and sometimes they get an answer. Sometimes it's like a bonus. Someone has a near-death experience, you don't ask about it, but you get the answer anyway, or some kind of answer. I'll give you a few answers that I came across. It is a game. God just wants to have a game, play with us. We are perfect already. So the only thing we need to do is express our divinity. It is to practice love or to raise the energy and go through that chapter and you find some more. And I would like to give you one example of an NDE. This case was Christina. She was 8 years old when she was abducted by 2 men and assaulted. She was taken to a little pond where they tried to drown her. Her head was under the water, but not facing down, but up, so she could see through the water, she could see the sun. And at the same time, she was hovering above the scene. So that's what I said before, you can be in 2 places at the same time. And there she saw how her father came running to rescue her. And then she was rescued. But in the meantime, she had her near-death experience. And in her near-death experience, she said, she was 8 years old, she said, I had a conversation with someone, and that must be God because there's no one else. And God told me that life is easy because there is an easy recipe for life, and that contains 4 ingredients. It's very easy. So what are the ingredients? Love, be loved, just be, and experience life. Love, be loved, just be, experience life. Now, the latter 2 are easy. You do that already by sitting on a chair, doing nothing. You just be and you experience life, okay? That's easy. But the 2 first ones, love and be loved, require action. That's where it gets interesting. Okay, so that was number 10. Number 11, of course, NDErs go back again. So there is one moment that they get back into their body, and that's the one but last phase. Normally, that's really easy. So there's not much information about how to get back. You know, the getting out part, the NDEs is interesting. NDEs talk about in length about how they get out of their body, what happens and so, but the return part is sometimes like, ooh, I'm there, and suddenly it doesn't take any time, there's nothing to say about, but sometimes there is something to be said about. Most of the time, people feel the body is cold and dirty and much too small, because you have such an expanse. You are spirit. You are so big. You know everything. You feel everything. And they have to squeeze that into this little cold, meaty something. And sometimes it's difficult. Like Elizabeth Crone, she wrote in her book, she said, I had to be squeezed really to get into my body again. They squeezed me, they hugged me, and they squeezed me into their body again. And then Ellen Dye said, it's like an elephant. They have to press into a Coca-Cola can. A lot of it will be outside the can, I think, but that's the case. And then a story about Kimberly Clark Sharp. She said that in her talk too, but I want to say that here too. It's really funny. She says she's really bad in parallel parking. So if she backs up the car to do it parallel parking, she will be always a few feet away from the curb. Now, parking back into her body was just as difficult for her. She was off by a few feet, she said. So what do you do? I mean, you need to go back into the body, but how do you do that last part? Now, she was helped, fortunately, because there was, that's funny how that when she was on the sidewalk, I picture a lot of people around looking on, oh, there's something happening there. And then suddenly no one does something, and she was given up already, so there's nothing to do. We can't do anything about her. But then one man just crawled his way in and saw her and gave her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And the moment he pressed his lips on hers, she was able to go back into her body. That's how she said. It helped her, the last little step, the 2 feet, get into her body. And at that moment, she felt how the man was thinking, where he came from, all his emotions, and also that he thought, I have to do it because I'm sitting here, so everyone is looking upon me, so I need to do something. So he pressed his lips on her, and then it happened. So, and then the last chapter, that's number 12, that's the after effects, of course. If you come back again, it's not easy. That's why I think being an NDEer is a very difficult task, because you need to come back again, to adapt life where there's so seemingly not enough love. There is a lot of love, but seemingly not. Christina, the girl with the 4 ingredients from God, remember? She thinks of her NDE every day, multiple times. She wanted to go back. She is now in a phase where she accepts it, that she's back and not there in this wonderful place. There's more people that have depressions. People don't have any fear of death. You know all these things. Nature and people are more important. Lower tolerance for light, sound, and medicine. You need less medicine than others. Higher tolerance for people and what they do. Feel emotions of others, being a medium or psychic. Less religious, more spiritual. Interfering with electricity. I'm not an NDEer, but my watch seems not to work anymore. Self-healing is said a lot of times. So that is those are the after effects. You have to go through them. It's really interesting in my book. And now, this is the thing, if I wrap up everything, what I think is that NDEs should be getting more out there. That's why I think it's so important for NDErs to write up their stories. Doesn't have to be in a book, but you can submit it to one of the websites, or you can talk about it to others. And veridical observations will get more and more, because the general public will like to know that kind of, those kind of stories, because then they will think, okay, that is some kind of circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real. And then they will probably think, what are the messages, or the main things that come out of NDEs? And those are love and oneness. If people would understand that better, love and oneness, that if I do something to you, I actually do it to myself, or to the whole world, to the whole universe, then people will be more loving, more caring towards each other, towards animals, and towards nature in general. And that's where I hope we will go. Thank you for your attention. It was a pleasure to be here with you. There will be a possibility to ask questions. There will be a gentleman somewhere in the corridor here.
Yeah, if you have any questions, come and line up here.
If you have any questions, please come up and line up right next to me, and then I'll hand you the mic. Thank you.
We can hear you. That's nice.
Okay, it's awfully loud. Okay. So my dad passed away when I was 22, and I felt him around me my whole life. And then I had this child, and I feel very certain that an aspect of my dad is in my child. So my question is, did you hear anything in your works about a person being in the oneness? Because I feel very certain that my dad, that would be where he would be the most comfortable, in the oneness, but also an aspect being here on earth.
Let me answer that in more general terms. I mean, we are one. There is one big pool of oneness. It's difficult to think about that because we are not there yet. But try to understand that we are one. That means actually I am you and you are me. We don't know that now because I will go home and you won't be there. Your part will not be there. But I am able to feel what you feel as if I'm you, especially when I'm dead. So this oneness, all the aspects and information that's in there, in that intelligence, in that all that there is, can be accessed. So if you feel that you feel your father through your child, that might be possible because there is oneness that the child can tap into and bring out part of what your father is. Doesn't necessarily mean that your father is partly in there. But I want to just stress that, there is this oneness, and if it touches perhaps upon reincarnation. You know, reincarnation is something that we are learned to consider in a linear way. So I have had past lives. You rarely hear something about future lives, but it's in one direction. But we hear from NDErs that time is not there. So having past lives is not necessary because we can access anything. So you can think of reincarnation in a different way than we usually do. That's the only thing that I say. I just try to say something that is different from the perspective we always have from reincarnation. I will be able to understand exactly what Cleopatra did, or the woman who sold fish on the market in front of the Notre Dame in Paris. An insignificant, perhaps we think insignificant person. No one is insignificant. But I will be able to access every bit of information. And I think that if you feel that you had previous lives, then they could also be lives that actually were there, but have a significance for you in this life. That's why they present themselves to you as a previous life. But it's just an idea. I don't know it. No one knows. No one can know this because we are in 3D plus one time dimension. And the time dimension goes only one direction. So it's impossible to exactly know what happens in a more dimensional world because that's impossible. I hope I make myself clear with that. But we are one. We are one. So it means that what I do to you, I do actually to myself. I hope that was some kind of answer there.
Does anyone else have any questions? If you do, please come up here.
There's one person coming up.
I'm wondering if you could speak just a little bit more about distressing NDEs and any correlations that you have seen in terms of who has them, and also any examples of distressing NDEs that have transformed into positive NDEs.
The last part of your question, many distressing NDEs have changed into blissful ones at the end. It could be because the person was thinking of the deity they were brought up with. For instance, Jesus in Howard Storm's story, and he takes Howard Storm out of his distressing NDE. Others think of light. There's one person that comes to my mind that was meditating during all the assaults that were coming towards him. He was meditating, he's quieting his mind down, and then everything went smoother and nicer. So again, also what I said with Ellen Dye's NDE, remember she was in this dark area. She had some influence over how she would see everything. She wanted to see rolling hills and smelling flowers and whatever. That came to her. So there is some kind of influence you have over that. But there are also NDEs that end still in a distressing situation. But still, I believe that we all go eventually home. And the first part of your question, I actually forgot. Sorry, you come back again.
It was just any correlations that you have seen about types of people who have or who don't have distressing NDEs.
Oh yeah, who has them?
Who has them?
Yeah. So it can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone. The idea that is there, it's not that if you have had a bad life, or that you have been naughty or whatever, you get distressing NDEs. That's not the case. There's a lot of evidence that goes against this. So it can happen to anyone. So that's the reason why we need to find another explanation for that. And what Nancy came up with, and I think she's in the right direction, is that still things from the collective unconscious comes up, or from your own background come up, and that can be randomly. Sir?
Yes. I'm anxious to read your book because I've enjoyed your discussion of so many wonderful experiences. I'm not an experiencer myself, but I've read many reports of people meeting angels, guides, and beings of light, and those sorts of entities in the hereafter. But now the Department of Defense says that ET is real, that UFOs are in fact not ours, and they come from somewhere else. Are there any reports of ET in our heaven, or do they have their own?
Interesting question. Good question. ETs is extraterrestrial, so something from another body in the sky, so in the universe. I can tell you that there have been NDErs that went through all the universe and saw lots of life in it. Not only, we think we are alone here. And they said there are other life forms out there, but they are so far away. It's difficult for them to come here. But you never know. But the thing is that we think we are unique. Well, we are, of course, but there are other life forms in other places. That's what NDErs say, that have been on a tour through the universe, and that can happen to you too.
If you do have a question, please start forwarding a line so that we're ready to go to the next one. Thank you.
I don't really have a question, but one quick comment about the ET thing. I follow the Burn from Tibet, indigenous religion, shamanic traditions, but you have a tantra that says Dzogchen, which is great perfection, one of the teachings, has been taught in 13 different star systems, so there's that.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
I was wondering if anyone could explain at all why some people have an NDE and some people don't when they come back. And also, just a comment which you said about people getting their information out and writing it. I think that's so important because I'm not an experiencer, but I feel like the message to be learned from those people is so important. And the more people that can come to these conferences, I think is extremely important.
Yeah. Can you repeat your question once more?
Whether or not people that don't experience it, why some
Oh
people
yeah,
do
that
and
was
some
it.
people
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. In the Netherlands, there was a first study done prospectively by a group around Pim van Lommel. You might know the name. They took in their database all the people that were having a heart attack and brought into a hospital and resuscitated. You need to have a resuscitation, otherwise you can't talk to these people, of course, later on. So, and the question was, did you have a recollection of what happened during the time you were out? And there were like 62, I think, or 82 out of 344 people that had a recollection, and those were NDEs. So there is a number of people who don't have an NDE, and that's why they could compare these two groups to see if there is any difference. Because if there is a difference between these two groups, it could be the reason why one group has an NDE and the other not. There were no differences. So that's in brief the study that Pim van Lommel did with his people. But it shows you that there is a category of people that do not have an NDE. And the reason why, I don't know. Sometimes the idea is maybe that memory is necessary in a sort of way that it will be a recollection. Or maybe the NDE or the people were not far away into their unconsciousness or not really outside of their body. That's inconclusive, I think. I don't know if there's other study about that, but it's difficult to say you get an NDE under these and these circumstances. The only thing we know is that NDEs can arise in many circumstances, mainly medical critical situations. If you have a heart attack or you park your car against a tree very violently, or other cases. But also, for instance, there are reports of people, a lot of reports of people that have a psychological downturn in their life. They are really at the end of what they can do, and they are so depressed that they get such an experience. There are also reports of people after deep meditation or deep prayers, and there have been people having NDEs spontaneously. Now, that's why I think the word NDE is a bit difficult, because it gives the impression that you need to be near to your death in order to have such an experience. It's not necessary. Then they have different terminology, so that would be an STE or whatever. So it comes down that we don't know all these things, and I get a sign now that I need to stop. But it's difficult to tell when you can have an NDE. It can happen in all kinds of circumstances. Thank you very much.